It all starts in a scene of pure destruction caused by a terrorist attack. Ever since people started awakening special abilities, the world has been living under the constant threat of rogue attacks. Since government forces can't seem to keep a lid on it, everyday people without powers have started hiring private security just to stay safe and right in the middle of all these protectors. There is one who truly stands out from the rest. He became known far and wide as the strongest bodyguard alive. The name of this legendary protector is Ryushin. He has protected countless high-profile billionaires and has never failed a single mission in his entire career. His success rate in keeping clients alive has reached a mind-blowing 248%. And the big secret behind how he pulls off such an unbelievable number begins to unravel right now. C-class terrorist named Hire flashes a poster and warns that their next target is the pop star Ri, who needs to be taken out in 3 days during a concert. Another terrorist named Hesk takes a puff from his cigar and brags that taking out a simple pop star is going to be a walk in the park. He admits he has never actually seen her face, but his partner explains that she is a massive solo pop star who had to leave her old group after a major incident. Hesk complains and says he doesn't need to know the body measurements of someone who is about to be history, but the other snaps back, saying it is crucial intel that he just doesn't get. Right then, Hire drops a dead serious warning and tells them they have a massive problem on their hands. He reveals that the girl's personal bodyguard happens to be none other than the feared Ryushin. Hesk tenses up instantly at the sound of the name and admits he has heard plenty of wild rumors about this guy. Hesk asks if his partner has ever met him face to face, but he says he has never seen him and asks what kind of power the bodyguard actually has. Hire then shares that, according to the rumors, the man can use any weapon that exists in the entire world. Hesk questions if he really uses every single weapon, but Hire admits he doesn't know the exact details of that power either. Right at that moment, a female voice chimes in with a laugh, calling both of them total cowards. She scoffs at the situation and says that, at the end of the day, the guy is nothing more than a simple bodyguard. This is Nader, a dangerous A-class terrorist who views bodyguards as nothing but human shields. She finds the rumor hilarious and says it is impossible for a human being to carry every weapon in the world around with them. With a sarcastic smirk, she plans to send both the pop star and the bodyguard straight to the underworld. But out of nowhere, a massive blast of blue energy completely obliterates the wall of the room where they were talking. The entire place gets covered in thick smoke and dust, leaving the villains coughing and completely out of the loop. The terrorists are left in total shock by the sudden raid and wonder what on earth is going on. Nader tries to squint through the rubble to find out who was responsible for the blast. Her eyes widen in pure terror as she notices a figure emerging right in front of them. Out of the thick smoke, the silhouette of a man holding a briefcase appears, walking completely calm and collected. This man is Ryushin himself, staring them down with a cold, dead serious, and intimidating glare. The villains panic and wonder who he is. Completely unaware of the real reason why he is called the strongest, desperate to defend themselves, the 3 terrorists scramble to activate their special abilities. While the enemies scream, demanding to know his identity, Ryushin casually tosses his briefcase into the air with total indifference. Mid-air, the briefcase begins to disassemble all on its own, glowing with an intense blue energy. He grips the weapon, which has transformed into a giant hammer, ensuring that danger will never get anywhere near his client. With a single devastating swing, he charges at the villains, unleashing his full power. Ryushin simply neutralizes every single threat before they can even get their evil plan off the ground. After taking care of the enemies, the bodyguard turns his back with extreme calmness. Slumped on the ground and heavily bruised, Nader complains about him calling himself a bodyguard. She coughs and realizes that he is clearly just a ruthless hitman in disguise. The MC ignores her words and catches the handle of his briefcase as it drops from the sky. He checks in, stating that the target has been successfully secured, bumping his win rate up to 249%. Using this unconventional style of protection, he keeps working hard at his day job. A little while later, the scene shifts to a packed stadium with thousands of fans waving glowing light sticks. While the crowd makes some noise, a mysterious voice echoes, wishing Ryushin a good evening. Several enemies armed with traditional staffs show up, blocking the MC's path. Ryushin is sitting on the ground looking exhausted in front of this fresh gang of opponents. The horned girl leading the group introduces herself as Neo, a department head from the tragedy organization. She stares him down intensely, revealing herself to be a dangerous S-tier terrorist. Ryushin, looking pretty banged up with scrapes on his face, deeply regrets how things turned out. Ryushin says he still has a long way to go, as he thought he had already cleared out all the intruders, but Neo tells him not to be so hard on himself. She explains that her group isn't actually after the pop star, but rather Ryushin himself. He is surprised to find out that he is the target, and before moving forward, he decides to ask her a question. She asks why he goes all out to protect his clients by acting in such an aggressive way. Ryushin repeats the question thoughtfully, pondering what she meant by that style of protection. He thinks back to when he had just joined the agency and was given the assignment to protect a pop star girl group. The ultimate dream of those girls was to make the whole world hear their music. Their very first live stage performance was about to happen right before his eyes. Since it was his first mission too, Ryushin swore he would protect them with everything he had. His boss knew the exact location and identity of the enemies, but decided to just sit back and wait for them to strike. Worried, Ryushin asked if it was really okay to operate that way, but she just brushed off his concerns. He suggested they should raid the place and strike first, since they knew where the enemies were hiding, but she just laughed it off. She called him an idiot, asking if he wanted to be a hitman, and reminded him that they were just bodyguards. She topped it off by telling the rookie not to lecture his superior and to leave everything in her hands. The MC apologized, but because they waited so long for the enemies to make a move, the absolute worst happened. The venue was completely ruined, leaving only the blue-haired pop star weeping while holding her fallen teammate. All the other members of the group ended up losing their lives in a tragic way that day. Young Ri cried her eyes out, devastated that she had lost all her friends. Ryushin could only look down, covered in dust, and offer a sincere apology for his failure. He felt incredibly guilty and kept apologizing under the moonlight that night. Sometime later, his boss found him sitting all by himself in a dark corner of the hallway. She asked why he looked so down in the dumps, and Ryushin lamented failing to protect the girls. He felt terrible for messing up right on his very first assignment, but his boss questioned if he had truly failed. She explained that the main client who actually paid for the service was kept safe, so the mission was technically a success. Ryushin was confused, and she revealed that those rookie girls didn't have the money to hire real security. Because of that, they pooled every single penny they had just to try and get some help. But the total amount they scraped together was only enough to cover a single bodyguard. Since the only one who actually put her name on the contract was protected, she insisted the mission went perfectly. She then told him to stop whining and to quit moping around once and for all. Except, from that fateful day on, his life changed completely. Ryushin threw all caution to the wind and lived out his days like an empty, aimless shell. However, on one of those aimless nights, something caught his eye in the middle of the street. He spotted Ri busking all by herself on the sidewalk with her guitar, trying her best to move on. He was stunned to see that, even after going through such a horrific tragedy, she was still out there. The girl simply refused to give up on her musical dream. To honor the wishes of her late friends, she kept giving it her absolute all, day after day. Watching her sing with so much drive, Ryushin finally found his own purpose in life. He decided he would do whatever it takes to ensure a tragedy like that would never happen again. Because of that, he swore he would preemptively eliminate any threat that dared to show its face in this world. Neo finds the story touching and finally understands the reason why he protects people that way. She asks what he is really after, since he obviously didn't show up just to watch the concert. Ryushin questions if her group is Tragedy, that famous large-scale rogue organization. She confirms it directly, and without beating around the bush, Neo explains that they are all standing there acting as official representatives of Tragedy. She extends her hand to him and lets him know she has a very interesting business proposal for him. Ryushin becomes highly suspicious of the villain's sudden business approach. Neo promises that if he teams up with them, nobody will lay a finger on him or Rie, as long as he stops hunting them down. She reminds him that it is impossible to get rid of every threat in the world, and even if he did, new dangers would just pop up. Because of that, she suggests it would be way smarter for him to work alongside the side. He can actually reason with. Neo keeps her hand extended, eagerly waiting for a final answer from the guy Ryushin, then looks her dead in the eye and asks if she has ever heard of a famous popular saying, with his face covered in scuffs. He states with absolute conviction that they never negotiate with terrorists. With a look of pure boredom and disappointment, she simply calls him a complete idiot. Without wasting any more time, she orders all her henchmen to charge at once and end his life. Ryushin fires right back at the provocation, asking exactly who she is calling an idiot around here. He lifts his glowing briefcase and asks if she even knows whose turf they are stepping on right now. Neo's henchmen keep rushing full speed toward him to deliver their most violent strikes. Suddenly, the power in the entire venue cuts out, plunging the whole arena into pitch-black darkness. The enemies start cursing in a panic mid-darkness, completely unable to see a single thing. Totally lost in the dark, the henchmen call out for their leader, looking pretty worried. To fix the problem, Neo uses her ability and sets her own staff ablaze to light up the room. With a serious and furious glare, she barks orders for all her henchmen to keep their cool. But as she looks ahead, she runs right into most of her men slumped over and defeated on the floor. Neo is left in total shock and completely horrified, unable to comprehend how everything went down so fast. Ryushin explains that, even before Ria takes the stage to sing, the arena lights always go dark. He takes advantage of the total blackout to move like lightning and land lightning-fast strikes on his opponents. The bodyguard points out that all the lights at the concert venue always stay 100% dark at that exact moment. The villain barely has time to react when she realizes he has already closed the gap and is standing right in front of her. He seizes the opening and lands an extremely heavy, dead-on blow against Neo. From the horrific impact of the direct hit, she ends up spitting out a fair amount of blood. She gets sent flying backward with massive force, crashing heavily onto the arena floor. Down and irritated, she realizes he was just stalling with that conversation to buy himself some time. She glares at him with pure rage and says he is a true monster in human form. Ryushin steps up imposingly while channeling his powerful blue energy directly into his gauntlets. He gives a stern warning that, from that exact moment on, he has officially classified her as a real threat. Activating gauntlet mode, the bodyguard coldly declares that he is going to take her off the board once and for all. The rogue remains down on the floor, completely pinned by the warrior's intimidating presence. Even though she is badly hurt, she smirks mockingly and questions if he really thinks he can just wipe out all threats. The MC just watches her in silence with an extremely cold and locked-in gaze. Consumed by rage, she ignites her staff with massive flames and screams at him not to get so full of himself. The villain charges full force into a desperate attack, using the absolute maximum power of her fire element. She asks if he honestly believes a single person can put an end to every threat in the entire world. She mocks the situation and tells him to save those silly pipe dreams for when he's actually asleep. Her power surges even more, and she claims that this grand dream of the MC is totally pointless. She screams with disdain that this whole thing is nothing more than the naive fantasy of a completely delusional fool. However, his fist collides with her attack at full force, triggering a massive clash of energy. Ryushin's strength overpowers the flames and hits the villain dead on, leaving her heavily bruised. She slides defeated across the stadium floor, stopping right next to a few spectators watching the commotion. The fans in the bleachers are left super surprised and startled by the sudden chaos happening right next to them. A little boy in the crowd mistakes her flaming staff for a giant glow stick. Leaving the villain absolutely outraged, Ryushin walks over calmly in her direction and murmurs that he ended up making a slight slip-up. He admits he miscalculated his own strength and wound up tossing his opponent way too far. Neo glares at him with immense dread, realizing that this bodyguard's power is on a completely different level. He confesses that he also thought Ri's dream was a pretty naive pipe dream when he first heard it. He then begins to recall a conversation he had with Ri in the dressing room some time ago. Back then, she explained that if they could just reach one person at a time, who knows, maybe one day the dream would become a reality. Ryushin questioned her on whether she knew just how many people there were in the world, and she agreed it was a stretch. But she followed up by saying that instead of just talking about it, the best solution is to simply take action. With a beautiful smile on her face, Ri concluded that nobody is ever going to know the final result without trying first. He remembers how the girl's audience started out incredibly small, with only 2 people watching over time, dozens of fans turned into hundreds, and her crowd kept growing without stopping. And now, she is standing in front of a packed stadium with thousands of people cheering her on. Ryushin hears the crowd roaring and mentions that it must be just about time for Ri to take the stage. He states that if he keeps taking out threats one by one, someday he will manage to clear out all danger from the world. Neo screams, saying that is ridiculous because even if he clears out current threats, new ones will just keep popping up. She guarantees that he will never be able to put an end to all the dangers in the world for good. Neo insists on him teaming up with her group, but Ryushin just begins to respond in a thoughtful tone. He fires back, saying that is something she will never know until he tries. Repeating the pop star's exact words, Ryushin advises the little boy to wave his glow stick and enjoy the show, leaving Neo furious enough to threaten the kid. She grumbles angrily that absolutely everyone in this stadium is testing her patience. Ryushin reflects on the promise he made to protect absolutely everyone. With a dark smirk, she claims that a convenient solution like that doesn't exist in the real world. She warns that she is going to make him face reality right then and there at that exact moment. Suddenly, she flies high into the sky, glowing with massive wings made of pure blue energy. She screams from above that this naive, childish dream the MC carries is nothing but an illusion. Ryushin locks his eyes on her with absolute seriousness, without showing a single shred of fear. She drops a massive amount of blue power straight in the MC's direction. Neo keeps screaming from up high that his promises are nothing more than empty, worthless words. She swears she will blow up the entire stadium, crushing his dream and that pop star's once and for all. She channels all her strength into a devastating final blow aimed directly at the MC. Ryushin pulls out a bright glow stick and warns that he won't allow her to do that. He remembers the oath he took to never let a tragedy like that happen ever again. He dashes at high speed and ironically compliments his opponent's blue flames. The hero leaps toward the strike and says her energy is the perfect size. He explains that her attack is going to work perfectly as special visual effects for the show's opening act. Ryushin bats her attack right back, using his glow stick to deflect all the energy. A magnificent explosion of blue light goes off in the arena sky, illuminating everything beautifully. The MC watches the energy scatter brilliantly over the stadium. From above, the villain falls into absolute despair, watching her own power get deflected with ease. On stage, Ri's blue hair flutters beautifully as she gets ready to step into the spotlight. Ri emerges looking stunning in her performance outfit, walking out with all the confidence in the world. She looks up at the sky lit up by sparkling streaks, thinking it's all part of the concert's opening show. The fans in the bleachers are also left amazed by that surprising visual effect. With a peaceful look, the pop star enjoys the lights shining like stars in the dark. Ryushin's glow stick shines intensely at the top of the stadium after the clash. He stays on watch up high with his duty fully taken care of. The hero watches the whole crowd down below with the calm, peaceful gaze of a protector. Ri smiles genuinely, seeing that everything is running perfectly smoothly at her concert. She takes a deep breath and gets ready to kick off her highly anticipated musical performance. She excitedly asks the crowd if everybody is truly ready to get things started. With her hand raised high, the girl showcases all her positive energy to the fans. Ri screams excitedly into the mic, hyping up all the fans in attendance with her unique charisma. The entire stadium goes wild on the spot, cheering and applauding with massive energy. The most passionate fans start crying tears of joy while waving their blue light sticks. Meanwhile, Neo remains down on the ground, completely defeated and without any strength left to fight. Ryushin walks up to her and asks with total calmness if she has regained consciousness yet. Neo groans in discomfort, but the hero tells her not to strain herself and to just sit back and enjoy the show. He points proudly toward the stage and asks if Ri isn't simply the most gorgeous pop star of them all. And to wrap things up, the little boy waves happily with his light stick, enjoying the show in total safety. Neo watches all of that in silence, completely unable to say a single thing. She says he is a fool, because giving up right there would have been way easier than facing what's ahead. Since the fallen don't get to achieve dreams, Neo warns that with the failure of the negotiation, both he and the pop star are officially on the tragedy organization's radar for good. Given that, she asks seriously what the bodyguard plans to do from here on out. He just glares at her with his red eyes glowing with absolute determination. With a light sigh, he begins to give his answer while hearing Ri singing in the background. The hero states that he will simply keep doing exactly what he has always done best. The story cuts to the city of Naftafal, known for being overrun by dangerous rogue factions. A group of local thugs wonders if that spot is truly the meeting point. At that moment, Ryushin appears, firmly gripping his well-known combat briefcase. He carries Neo all tied up and asks if this is really the city that tragedy supposedly took over. With the villain completely gagged by his side, he gets ready to kick off the action. The thugs draw their weapons angrily and scream, asking who on earth he is. The hero just warns them that their protection begins right now and releases his energy. A horde of furious enemies charges all at once in the MC's direction. Ryushin tosses the tied-up Neo to a safe corner so she doesn't get hit during the brawl. While she grumbles from the rough landing, his briefcase begins to transform rapidly. Activating hammer mode, the bodyguard takes up his classic powerful battle stance. The criminals rush toward him, wielding their sharp swords and knives. With a single devastating spin of his hammer, the hero sends dozens of enemies flying through the air. He charges right into the middle of the horde, easily wiping out anyone who dares cross his path. In just a few seconds, almost all the criminals are already down and out on the floor. The survivors scream furiously, asking what he thinks he's doing there. He looks at the thugs with coldness and asks if they can't see the obvious. The MC simply responds directly that he is there executing a protection detail. The enemies are left completely clueless, blinking in confusion at that nonsensical answer. They conclude that, just like the rumors say, this man is completely out of his mind. Their leader takes a puff and questions if that actually looks like protection to anyone. This man is Ostium. The guardian of Naftafal and a feared S-tier rogue operative Ryushin answers that it is, because every single thug here is nothing but a risk to his target. He states that sooner or later they would turn into a threat, so he is going to take them out ahead of time. A henchman screams, daring Ryushin to try, but Ostium immediately orders him to hold on. The guardian says he has just one important question to ask before they get the fight started. He questions how the MC managed to sniff out the location of that hideout. At that moment, Neo appears on the floor, completely gagged, sweating bullets and looking very guilty. He points out that this is an ultra-secret spot that almost nobody from the security agency knows about. Neo tries to mumble through her gag, turning completely red with embarrassment. Ryushin rips the tape off her mouth with force, letting the villain finally breathe a sigh of relief. She starts laughing hysterically and screams the hero's name in mockery. Neo ironically offers her condolences to the MC for being in such a dangerous place. She explains that this is the only entrance that connects to the city center, which is packed with elite rogue units. On top of that, she emphasizes that Ostium is an unbeatable guardian who has never let a single intruder pass. She screams, revealing that the only reason she told him about this place was to make it his final resting place. Neo claims with an evil smirk that her comrades are simply going to wipe him out right there. Neo calls out to her allies in celebration, but Ostium cuts her off. Puffing his cigar with total seriousness, he glares at her threateningly and asks if she has completely lost her mind. The leader questions her for giving away the location of their base just to try and save her own skin. Ostium then asks angrily where the other subordinates who were supposed to be with her are super nervous. She stammers and says they got caught and taken to the concert venue. She tries to defend herself, saying she didn't hand them over on purpose, but rather they all got picked up together. Ostium complains with disdain that she is garbage who taints even the reputation of villains, and admits he already expected something like that. He warns sternly that as soon as they finish off Ryushin, she will be executed right then and there without a shred of mercy. Neo panics completely, and is left frozen upon hearing the death sentence from her own ally. She stays there moping and wondering how things could have gone so horribly wrong on her. And Neo internally admits that she genuinely believed her comrades were going to roll over Ryushin with ease. She realizes with dread that if the bodyguard loses that battle right there against them, she is going to end up paying the price too. Ryushin comments quite ironically that it looks like her own allies can't stand her at all. Desperate, she tries to stammer, saying everything is just a terrible misunderstanding and that she never double-crossed anyone. The other rogue operatives tell her to shut her mouth and start making extremely harsh threats of payback against her. One of the female villains screams in anger, saying Neo has always annoyed her for dressing in such a flashy way. Another henchman calls her a delusional phony and says she shouldn't even wear that hairstyle with a face like hers. Ryushin is actually surprised and asks what she did that was so bad to be so hated by her own partners in crime. Completely cornered and trembling with fear, she cries and swallows hard, unable to defend herself against the accusations. She begins to silently beg for Ryushin to hold his ground. While the enemies keep calling her a traitor, Ostium decides to focus on the hero and warns that he is going to give him a single chance to get out of there alive. He proposes that if Ryushin hands Neo back over, he can walk away scot-free, leaving the girl in total panic. Neo tries to alert the MC that they are criminals and will never keep their word, but Ryushin reminds her that she is one of them too. The MC just glares at her in silence for a moment, keeping a thoughtful look on his face. Upon seeing the tears in Neo's eyes, the bodyguard lets out a slight reflective murmur. He scratches his head in a very casual way and wonders aloud what he should do in that situation. He plays dumb, saying there are too many enemies and he doesn't know how to win. Leaving the villains pretty confused, Ryushin jokes around, saying maybe he should take the deal and hand her over, making the girl desperately beg him not to do it. She insists that he is strong and beat another S tier easily, but he fires back coldly, saying she only survived because she was the weakest one of all. He adds that if he refuses, it would look like a bodyguard protecting a rogue operative, and she questions what would be so wrong with that. Neo screams that rogue operatives have the right to hire bodyguards too, making Ostium lose his temper at that nonsense. Except Ryushin just takes a step forward and starts talking about the rules of his job. He points out coldly that she isn't even an official client that he has signed a real contract with. But right after, he raises his hand and triggers a glowing hologram, leaving Neo completely clueless. She watches that screen of light appear right before her eyes with plenty of surprise. Meanwhile, the other rogue agents keep charging forward and state that all traitors will be taken care of. They decree with fury that any betrayal must be punished with immediate elimination, right then and there. They go all out to deliver the final blow against the defenseless girl, panicking at the approach of the enemies. She starts screaming his name without stopping. She begs for help as she sees the sharp blades of her former partners heading her way. Neo screams with all her might that she is hiring Ryushin as her official bodyguard. The MC just listens to her cry for help in silence. With a slight smirk on the corner of his mouth, he asks what the method of payment for the protection service will be. She promises to pay as much money as he wants, but Ryushin states he has absolutely no interest in cash. She is taken aback, and he explains that what he actually wants as payment is something else. A glowing contract appears floating in the air right in front of the totally terrified young girl. The digital document demands that she hand over absolutely all insider information regarding the tragedy organization. Ryushin emphasizes that he wants every single little detail she knows about the criminal syndicate. She is left completely in shock and says that handing over that top-secret intel is an absolute no-go. He just turns his back with his briefcase and warns that if she refuses, the deal is off. The enemies close in even further with their weapons raised, making the girl scream in terror. Crying and desperate not to finish her run right there, she agrees to sign the virtual contract no matter what her signature gets logged on the screen. Finalizing the protection agreement with the MC, she screams through her tears for him to look and see that she finally signed the hiring document. Ryushin approves the signature and says that, from that moment on, the protection contract is live with crushing force. He delivers a powerful strike and knocks out the enemies who were trying to attack Neo-Ostium, observes the area with a stern look. While the smoke from the latest attack clears out around him, Ryushin tells the girl he'll be counting on her help from now on, while she just groans in pain and cries tears of relief. He gives a confident smile and warmly calls her his brand new, beloved official client. Without missing a beat, the MC charges ahead at full speed with his energized fist. He lands a devastating punch on one of the thugs who tries to blindsiding him from behind. The enemy is sent flying away, coughing from the extreme force of the punch's impact. The other elite rogue units surround the bodyguard to try and jump him from all sides at the same time. He dodges quickly and lands an incredibly heavy punch right on the jaw of one of the attackers. Ryushin keeps up his fast counterattack, landing a dead-on strike on another armed opponent. He pulls off a devastating roundhouse kick at lightning speed to clear out the opponents around him. 3 powerful, furious enemies charge together to try and nail him once and for all, but he focuses his massive blue energy and gets ready to drop a massive counterattack back on them. With extremely fast and precise movements, he neutralizes all the attackers without breaking a sweat. Watching all of that go down up close, Neo is left jaw-dropped by his monstrous strength. She is amazed by the fact that he took down so many elite enemies in the blink of an eye. Neo internally admits that Ryushin is even stronger and more ruthless than the rumors she used to hear made him out to be. However, she knows that the Guardian Ostium is a different story and possesses an ability that raw brute force just can't beat. Naftofal is a hidden city where countless dangerous criminals reside, with entrances that are extremely well hidden. And even if someone managed to track down one of those entrances, no bodyguard has ever made it through alive. The reason is simple, since Ostium keeps watch over the entrance gates of Naftofal personally. Ryushin notices that the only enemy left standing in that hideout is the senior Guardian. Ostium praises the hero's performance and says he didn't expect him to clear out so many at one time. The villain focuses on his briefcase and asks if the kid's power consists of pulling any weapon out from inside it. He admits that the ability to handle weapons is impressive, but guarantees nobody gets into the city while he's on watch. The Guardian begins to radiate a massive amount of green flames around his own body. The hero just locks his red eyes on him and analyzes the opponent's transformation with seriousness. Ostium's skin and armor begin to alter in a bizarre way, expanding right in the middle of the smoke. 2 glowing slits resembling eyes appear on the massive metallic structure that is taking shape. The villain reveals that he himself is the actual, living, indestructible gate that leads into the city of Naftofal. Ryushin finds the ability to turn into a giant gate, pretty interesting, and readies his energy hammer. The massive gate keeps expanding and growing in size right in front of the MC, but he just runs toward the structure, saying that the bigger it is, the more surface area he has to smash. He stands firm, coldly reinforcing the words he had already delivered to his enemies earlier. The massive living gate repeats arrogantly that the hero will never manage to get past him no matter what. The guy shows a calm reaction and asks if he is absolutely 100% sure about all that. The hero then pulls out a massive, futuristic energy cannon and asks what he thinks of this weapon. The heavy tech weapon begins charging up a large amount of destructive energy in its sights. He fires a colossal shot that races at extreme speed against the opponent's barrier. The energy beam hits the gate dead on, but Ostium's barrier manages to firmly tank the impact. He checks out the result of the attack and admits that the durability of that defense is truly ridiculous. Neo screams out a warning that he won't be able to break through just by using the raw brute force of his strikes. She shares that 5 division heads from a top-tier security agency teamed up in the past just to try and crack his defense, but they couldn't even leave a single scratch. Because the gate only opens under a special activation condition, Ryushin becomes thoughtful upon hearing about this specific condition required to get the gate open. He asks what the condition is, but she says she has no clue, causing Ostium to mock that a clueless girl like her would never know anything. The massive gate claims mockingly that Neo's brain is completely empty and useless. She screams back irritated, saying she isn't clueless. But Ryushin coldly agrees with the villain that she actually is. Ostium complains that she wound up teaming up with Ryushin because she talks too much, and says he never liked her from the start of their missions. She screams indignantly, asking what she even did to be so hated by them, but he fires back, asking if she doesn't remember. With a look of pure contempt, the villain states clearly that people like her are the ones he hates most in the world. Ostium explains that the plan to raid Ryushin's place had already been posted on the base's bulletin board ahead of time. He complains that, even though she knew the plan, she went totally rogue and only brought her own subordinates along with her neo-stammers out of fear upon learning that the date was already up on the board, making the hero agree that it's no wonder everyone hates her there. He adds that she did the exact same thing with Ryushin's contract and didn't even read the text, but she says desperately that she had no choice, only to be told to pipe down the villain's screams, saying that foolish people like her who don't even read properly should be completely banned from this world. She complains, saying she isn't an idiot and knows how to read perfectly fine, but Ryushin insists coldly that she really doesn't. Neo screams that she reads 2 books a week, and when Ryushin asks if they are fairy tales, she gets ticked off while he ponders the conditions. Whining, she explains that power users usually set certain rules or activation conditions, ranging from simple to complex. Ostium's grand ability is simply creating special gates that connect to completely different spaces. Ryushin figures that since dozens of people pass through him multiple times a day, it would be impractical for the opening condition to be complex. He deduces from their bickering that the Guardian got mad because Neo forgot an extremely simple condition and looks around the room for clues. Suddenly, the MC focuses his gaze on a very specific detail right in front of him. He steps closer and stares at the massive structure, checking out every corner of the huge metallic doors. Neo screams, asking them to stop calling her stupid, but she gets told to shut it by both Ostium and Ryushin. She complains, asking if he wasn't on her side, but the hero just says calmly that he finally cracked the secret. He states aloud that he managed to figure out the exact condition needed to make that giant gate open up. Ryushin admits he didn't expect it to be something so silly and simple, and fully understands why the Guardian is so ticked off. Ostium's living gate gives off an eerie green glow facing the guy's logical conclusion. Neo watches him, pretty curious to find out what the grand answer to the puzzle actually is. The Bodyguard explains that, as everyone knows, awakened powers are usually split into 3 main categories. The first type consists of offensive abilities, completely geared toward direct attacks. The second category covers defensive abilities, with a total focus on protecting and deflecting strikes. And lastly, there are special type abilities, whose conditions and restrictions vary in difficulty to be used. In the case of offensive powers, the more complex the rules and requirements are, the more devastating the attack will be. With defensive abilities, it's the exact opposite, because the simpler the bypass conditions are, the stronger the defense becomes. He mentions that special types vary wildly in form and rules, so he decides to set them aside for now. Ostium's ability transforms him into a gate to protect the hideout, making it clearly a purely defensive power. He analyzes the glowing green metal structure to back up his line of reasoning. And judging by the extreme durability of the barrier, the condition to make the gate open has to be extremely simple. He asks if she managed to follow the logic yet, but Neo remains curious about what that condition actually is. The MC extends his arms, holding glowing blue chains, and reveals that the answer is pretty straightforward. He leaps up and hooks the blue energy chains directly onto the 2 large handles of the living gate. The chains end up firmly wrapped around the metal door pulls. Ryushin takes a power stance and gets ready to yank the energy gear with everything he's got. He reveals aloud that the opening condition isn't to push, but simply to pull the doors open. The young rogue operative is left wide-mouthed in utter surprise and shock upon hearing that the Bodyguard focuses all his physical strength to finish opening up the passage. He begins to pull the blue energy chains toward himself with extreme firmness and power. He explains that every single time other people tried to break in, they attacked by pushing the structure from the outside in. Since the rule is to pull, the gate would never open for anyone trying to force their way in by applying pushing force. Ryushin adds that this is why nobody ever managed to open the passage, making it a brilliant trick of deception. Neo thinks it's impossible for it to be something so simple, but the guy warns her he has the most decisive proof of all to show. He points to the middle of the structure and reveals that it is literally written to pull right there. She widens her eyes, completely unable to believe what she just heard from the MC. The glowing slit in the middle of Ostium's metallic structure begins to stand out in the scene. And sure enough, the word pull begins to shine clearly, right in the center of the gate. In fact, the gate itself showcases clear written instructions to pull and step back. Seeing that silly revelation right in front of her, the girl lets out a scream of complete shock. She calls Ostium an idiot, asking who in their right mind writes the opening rule out in the open like that. But the massive living gate snaps completely and screams right back, saying, "The only idiot here is her," Ostium asks when she thinks he wrote that, leaving Neo pretty confused while Ryushin keeps holding the chains. The Guardian screams that he wrote the instructions specifically for her right after the girl joined tragedy. Neo complains, telling him not to put the blame on her, but Ostium screams back, stating he has already said it more times than he can count. The living gate locks its gaze on Neo and says she always acted in a pretty stubborn way in the past. He recalls when she would beg to open the gate quickly, and he would calmly ask her to just pull the door instead of pushing it. Even with him insisting it was written to pull, she kept complaining that the gate wouldn't open no matter what Neo would start pounding on the structure, saying it was stuck, while Ostium desperately begged her to pull. The girl would then attack the gate with headbutts, staff strikes, and kicks, totally ignoring his warnings. Ostium vents in anger, saying it didn't matter how many hundreds of times he told them to pull, people insisted on pushing. Ryushin sympathizes with his struggle and comments that there are always fools who try to push, even when it's clearly labeled to pull. The Guardian agrees, tearing up from hatred, and says all intruders are a bunch of illiterate fools who just ignore the letters and bash the door. Neo lets out an awkward, sheepish laugh, admitting she didn't have the slightest clue that this was the real opening condition. Ostium cries, begging for people to learn how to read for once, and Ryushin says he gets his point of view. He warns that he is going to pull the door the right way and asks the Guardian to finally clear the path for them to enter. But Ostium warns that even knowing the rule, he can't let the Bodyguard pass and will resist with all his might. Ryushin gives a slight smirk and asks what on earth the Guardian is trying to say. By that, he begins to apply crushing force to the chains and says a gate that insists on staying shut is completely useless. The gate begins to shake and groan violently, leaving the Guardian startled by the guy's absurd level of strength. Ryushin pulls with all his blue energy and states that a locked gate should just have a closed sign written on it. Neo screams the MC's name in complete shock upon seeing what is about to go down right before her eyes. The MC glares at the gate with a confident look and declares that every door should do its job and swing wide open. Ostium laments in despair, saying never in his entire life had he let an intruder in, and now everything turned out like this. All of a sudden, he puts the blame entirely on Neo for this failure, screaming that everything happened because he decided to write that silly sign focused only on her. While light floods the room, the Guardian screams in despair that he will never in his life forgive the girl for this humiliation. Ostium adds that he will hold this grudge forever, while Neo just laughs nervously, feeling pretty guilty. At that exact moment, the long and legendary undefeated streak of the feared Guardian's defense finally comes to an end. The impenetrable gate that protected the feared city of Naftafal begins to slowly open up before the guy's colossal strength. And just like that, the barrier everyone believed to be absolutely unbreakable ends up completely forced open by the hero. Ryushin walks calmly into Naftafal with Neo over his shoulders, successfully completing the infiltration into enemy territory. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, the scene shifts to the imposing building that serves as the headquarters for the Tragedy Organization. Inside the main boardroom, a few high-ranking members of the Rogue Syndicate wait in a serious and mysterious manner. Other Inner Circle members are also present in the room in absolute silence, waiting for the proceedings to begin. The man sitting at the head of the table looks around the room and comments in a calm tone that everyone seems to be gathered for the talk. He folds his hands calmly on the table and says that now, with everyone present, they can finally kick off the pending business. The mysterious leader looks seriously at the group and announces he is starting today's important meeting. He reveals that the main topic to be debated there is precisely the recent infiltration pulled off by the Bodyguard Ryushin. That man is Palmer, the feared president of the Tragedy Alliance, who commands the operations of the rogue group with an iron fist. Palmer points to the digital screens and explains that the power demonstrated by Ryushin belongs to the special abilities category. He breaks down that the kid is capable of storing all his own spiritual energy inside that tech briefcase he carries around. The president adds that upon releasing this energy, the Bodyguard can materialize various types of destructive weapons. One of the members at the meeting table interrupts cynically and asks if the opponent's power has any obvious limitation. Palmer answers that it is highly probable he is totally unable to summon his energy weapons if he loses possession of that briefcase. Other villains wonder why he invaded the place if his role was to protect the pop star Ri, finding it a rookie mistake to leave her unprotected. One of the members looks at the photo projected on the meeting screen and questions if the client in question is that famous girl named Ri. The young girl with glasses on her forehead asks who on earth hired them to take down that singer who doesn't even seem all that famous. Palmer listens to the question in silence for a moment and decides to speak up calmly about the real identity of the secret client. He warns that this information is a confidential matter he cannot reveal right now, but promises to share everything with the group at the right time. A tense silence takes over the entire boardroom while the members process that vague answer from the president. Either way, he states that the main goal right now is to capture and contain Ryushin before the kid causes any more damage to their base. He looks intently at everyone present at the table and throws out the final question about which of them will volunteer to handle. This mission Ryushin observes the grand fortified city of Naftafal, which glows under the dark night with its massive purple lights. He, who is now wearing a disguise with a mustache and glasses while snacking on a sweet treat, comments that everyone used to call this place a rogue city. The local residents passing through the streets begin to look back with a pretty confused and surprised expression. Other pedestrians also turn around suddenly upon noticing the unusual presence that just walked past them. The guy adds that the place looks just like an ordinary city because any spot inhabited by people ends up looking this way. Neo, who is also disguised with white hair, asks if he seriously expected to see explosions going off non-stop all over the place. She complains about the wait and asks to ditch the disguise, but he calls her an idiot and reminds her that their faces are way too famous to walk around without cover. Neo suggests beating up anyone who attacks them, and mentions there are plenty of civilians there, making the hero find it funny that a rogue operative cares about ordinary people. Ryushin ignores the curious glares from the people around them, and decides to change the subject to focus on the main objective of the mission. He asks if they are heading straight to the tragedy headquarters, and she confirms right away that this is indeed their plan. But inside, the disguised girl gets pretty tense and silently hopes that the plan goes down exactly how she pictured it. The scene cuts back to the moment when Neo, still in her original form, screams in terror upon discovering they are going to raid the headquarters. Ryushin asks calmly if she has some problem with that, and the Oni answers desperately that it is actually a gargantuan problem. She explains that the main base is the spot where all the strongest leaders gather, but the kid says coldly that this is simply perfect. The hero leans in her direction and asks the young girl to remember very well what his true personal philosophy of protection is. He explains that his rule is to eliminate all threats at once, so danger never reaches the client. So having everyone gathered is paradise. Neo asks what he plans to do, raiding such a dangerous place completely solo, but the kid just questions the meaning of that word. Ryushin gives a pretty confident smirk and reminds her that, actually, the two of them are in this raid mission together. The girl screams, saying she is a full-fledged rogue operative and is not on his side, but he warns her she was discarded and must help him clear things up. Neo begs him to at least prepare and gather more allies before raiding, but the MC cuts her off, calling her name in a serious tone. He asks if she honestly thinks the enemies are going to sit around waiting for them, since the syndicate will also prepare over time. He stands up with his briefcase and explains that this would only make the fight bigger and drag it out, so the best move is to crush them before that happens. He glares at his ally firmly and tells her to take them to the enemy base already, reminding her that the two of them have a binding cooperation contract. Neo swallows hard and is left completely speechless, facing the scary and relentless determination of the young bodyguard back in the present. She thinks with disdain about this cooperation contract and mentally decides she is not going to play along with this joke at all. The disguised girl gives an evil smirk in secret and thinks that Ryushin should savor that treat because it would be his final meal. She reveals in her thoughts that they aren't actually heading to the headquarters, but rather to the local private security agency. Neo knows her comrades think she turned on the organization and switched sides to help the bodyguard, but she has a plan to sort this out. She plans to hand Ryushin over directly to the agency authorities to put an end to this big misunderstanding about her loyalty. That way, she would finally manage to get rid of the hero and go back to living her normal life as a wanted criminal from the rogue group. Suddenly, the young girl opens her eyes completely horrified upon locking her vision on a poster pasted right there on an alley wall. The poster shows a photo of the two of them with a bounty of $150,000 for Ryushin and $200,000 for capturing Neo on her poster. It is written very clearly that the use of firearms is fully authorized to cause the absolute maximum amount of discomfort possible. Ryushin analyzes the two bounties and complains quite annoyed upon noticing that the value on Neo's head is quite a bit higher than his. The young Oni gives a completely forced smile and begins to sweat cold upon realizing her own organization wants her gone at all costs. She changes her mind on the spot and desperately says to go straight to the headquarters, pretending they just took a wrong turn to the main base. Back at the tragedy office, the council members decide by consensus that President Palmer himself should go sort out this situation. Palmer is left pretty surprised and confused by the sudden demand from the group of rogue counselors regarding his departure. The small sorcerer with the pointed hat explains seriously that they never accept assignments when they don't know the true identity of the contractor. The other members fully agree and say that since the president is the only one who knows who the client is, he must handle it personally. The syndicate leader remains in absolute silence, facing the pressure and steady glares of all the members present at the large table. Palmer lets out a long sigh and admits he has no other choice but to reveal the secret he was already planning to share with them soon. He gets ready to speak and begins to reveal the identity of the mysterious person who ordered the execution and elimination of the famous pop star Ri. But before he can utter the client's name, the entire boardroom begins to shake violently with a loud crash from the outside. On the streets of the city of Naftafal, ordinary people also panic upon hearing the massive noise coming directly from the Grand Tower. One of the residents looks up at the sky and catches the reflection in his eyes of a mysterious youth plunging from above with a massive glowing weapon in hand. A large explosion of purple light and debris happens at the top of the main tragedy building, catching the attention of all the civilians on the streets. The people around are left completely open-mouthed and in a state of shock upon witnessing such a direct and violent raid right before them. A thick, dark smoke fills the ruined boardroom. Leaving the surviving leaders on high alert for imminent danger, Ryushin emerges falling from the destroyed ceiling amidst glowing debris and comes down full force toward the enemy council to initiate combat. Ryushin tells the leaders that their presence saves him the trouble of hunting them down, while Neo mutters frantically, saying she knows nothing. The MC gets into a combat stance, staring down President Palmer directly with an extremely serious and intimidating look. Ryushin warns that it's time to start his protection detail, while Palmer finds it amusing and comments that he really is a lost cause. Tragedy is known worldwide for being nothing less than the largest and most dangerous rogue organization on the entire planet, led closely by President Palmer. The feared organization also counts on the heavy backing of its 5 highly dangerous vice presidents. The hero remains standing in the center of the ruined room, with all the glares of the powerful leaders focused directly on his presence. The young girl with red markings on her face smirks and comments that Ryushin is even better looking in person than in the photos they had of him, but the bodyguard completely ignores the compliment and keeps his sharp predator glare locked on the opponents. In front of him, the other leaders comment on his youth and audacity, saying that arrogant youngsters like that usually have a pretty short shelf life. The woman with long silver hair just observes the whole situation in complete silence, without expressing any reaction or emotion. Palmer begins to laugh out loud and comments that the kid is truly as insane as the rumors say, for raiding enemy turf all by himself. Ryushin repeats that he isn't alone because Neo is there, but the girl panics and screams back, saying she has nothing to do with him. The president offers a seat to chat, but the hero declines and says he isn't tired thanks to Neo, who guided him perfectly. The MC then tosses his tech briefcase into the air while it begins to emit heavy discharges of bright blue energy. Palmer just watches the kid's movement without showing any concern, keeping a pretty confident smirk plastered on his face. The youth throws himself forward and firmly grips the handle of his powerful bluish energy weapon to deliver a crushing blow. He charges full force against the opponents and coldly screams that he has absolutely nothing to talk about with criminals and rogues. However, midway through his fast charge, the youth opens his eyes wide upon noticing something extremely bizarre happening right in front of him. His attack passes straight through the bodies of the enemy leaders, as if they were made of pure wind, leaving the hero pretty confused. He stops and analyzes the situation around him with caution, wondering internally what kind of bizarre and mysterious ability that could be. Palmer lets out a slight mock smirk and clarifies for the youth that what he is seeing is actually not an ability at all. He reveals that they are just holograms, mocking him by asking if he really thought such busy leaders would gather just because of a raid. Ryushin narrows his eyes, keeping his guard up. While the president's hologram keeps talking with a tone of superiority, Palmer taunts the bodyguard, arrogantly saying he doesn't have the required level to face them yet and tells him not to get so ahead of himself. Next, all the glowing projections of the leaders begin to flicker and vanish rapidly from the air, leaving the room empty. Ryushin is left alone in the massive ruined boardroom, trying to figure out what the enemy organization's next move will be. The last remnant of President Palmer's digital image smirks before vanishing completely from his sight in a mysterious way. The MC notices a strange purple energy appear and begin to wrap around his legs, limiting his movements in the room. He complains about the annoying technique and tries to analyze if it's a special type or if it actually belongs to the offensive abilities category. The villain's smirk echoes one last time through the quiet air before the entire tech projection dissipates. Once and for all, Palmer praises his courage to make it all the way there and lets him know that, as a reward, he will share an extremely valuable piece of info. He reveals enigmatically that the real mastermind behind the hit request on Rie is, in fact, someone he knows very well. The bodyguard opens his eyes wide and is left completely frozen upon hearing that shocking and unexpected revelation about his past. Palmer says goodbye, telling him they'll see each other soon. Provided he manages to survive long enough for that reunion to actually happen, the MC is left thoughtful, trying to decode who among all the people in his personal circle could have the desire to take down the singer. But Neo, who is down on the floor, screams desperately, saying that is definitely not the best time for him to stand around thinking like that. The girl shakes with panic and warns at the top of her lungs that enemy forces are closing in fast and that they need to move ASAP. Ryushin puts the young girl on his shoulder again and calmly asks, who exactly are the dangerous people coming after them? Suddenly, the blaring sound and flashing lights of security sirens begin to echo heavily throughout the ruined area of the tower. Neo screams desperately, revealing that the city's elite tactical force, known as the Marshals, has just arrived at the scene of the clash. The MC is left confused by the revelation and questions what exactly these marshals are that are surrounding the building's perimeter. The door of one of the armored cruisers opens slowly, revealing the silhouette of an imposing man wearing a luxurious vintage military uniform. The military man calmly adjusts his black bow tie and comments in a low voice that it has been quite a while since he was in an action like this. That is a robust man with white hair and a monocle who analyzes the damage and compares the sound of the large explosion to the rhythm of a percussion section. The military leader with icy blue eyes says it has been a very long time since he put on a good performance or a real combat show. Neo panics seeing the agency arrive, but Ryushin keeps his cool and asks if that man is really as dangerous as she says. The Oni warns, trembling, that the man's threat level is considered S-class, leaving the hero a bit curious about the strength classification. He scoffs, saying that Neo and Ostium are also S-class, which seems low tier, but she explains that this is the highest category that exists there. Neo reveals seriously that they don't usually evaluate strength in that simple way, leaving the MC curious about the meaning behind it. She begins to explain the internal secrets, revealing that the tragedy organization operates exactly like a major corporation. Neo explains that members with a D or C-class strength level basically function as section chiefs within the group. She keeps detailing the internal layout and reveals that B-class serves to identify the feared department heads. A-class is made up of deputy directors, who already possess absurd strength and command many operations in a harsh manner, and any position above that is led by S-class members, whose devastating power varies wildly depending on their standing. Neo locks her gaze, trembling with pure fear, and reveals that the powerful commander who just arrived at the building is highly dangerous. He is none other than the president of the security agency itself, directly responsible for managing Tragedy's internal security, and to sum up the whole situation in a very direct and simple way, the man is known for possessing an incredibly insane level of strength. The veteran closes his eyes calmly and takes the stance of a grand maestro about to kick off conducting a famous orchestra. He raises his baton toward the top of the large building and calmly utters the Allegro command aloud. Suddenly, the tower ceiling begins to cave in and Ryushin throws himself full force to the side to try and save Neo from being crushed by the debris. Neo begins to cry out of pure despair down on the floor, lamenting aloud and saying that everything is over for her once and for all. Meanwhile, outside, Maestro glares at his army of highly trained soldiers and gets ready to deliver his next attack order. He orders with class to play a funeral requiem for the intruders, and all the soldiers respond right away, accepting the chief's command. The tragedy structure splits with President Palmer at the top, assisted by 5 vice presidents who help command the corporation. Right below them are positioned 10 very powerful presidents who take care of directly managing all the group's subsidiaries. The positions go from section chief, manager, deputy director, and director all the way up to the highest positions of the feared criminal syndicate. Among them are the elite marshals who handle the protection of the location, all led directly by the imposing commander of the group. And the name of this fearsome agency president who commands the entire internal defense of the territory is known to everyone as Maestro Ryushin takes the moment to ask what her ranking is, and Neo proudly answers that she holds the prestigious position of director. The hero comments that now he gets why she is so low tier, leaving the Oni infuriated as she screams that the position of director is extremely powerful. He finds it ironic for a rogue group to talk so much about security, and suddenly begins to wonder why the enemies stopped the attack outside. Sure enough, outside the building, the elite forces cease their charges and position themselves patiently alongside their commander. The MC notices that Maestro gathered people who use musical instruments as lethal weapons, creating an orchestra-type tactical unit. Each one of those experienced soldiers carries a pretty exotic musical instrument that hides a devastating combat power. They observe the top of the tower with extreme concentration, patiently waiting for just the right cue from the commander to step into action. Tension takes over the entire army, while they keep their guard fully up for any kind of threat that might pop up from there. The MC says seriously that they are forgetting an extremely important detail at that moment, leaving Neo confused. At that moment, one of the female soldiers approaches Maestro, saluting, and reports that they have finished evacuating all civilians from the area safely. Maestro claps his hands, very pleased with the news, and cheerfully praises the excellent work his subordinate pulled off quickly. He turns his back and comments, satisfied that since the operation to pull out the citizens went off without any hitch, now they can move forward. One of the female allies suggests blowing up the building with the invaders inside, causing Neo to start screaming out of pure panic upon hearing that wild suggestion. The veteran lets them know there is no need to act in such an extreme way, but the soldier insists that leveling the entire tower would make things a lot easier. He turns to the elite team and delivers a speech reminding them that everyone there is a marshal and part of Tragedy's proud official orchestra. He states dramatically that they must act with class and elegance to capture the targets, but the truth behind the choice is a bit different. The two female soldiers whisper to each other, wondering if the boss has lost his marbles or gone senile, as they overlook the real reason he isn't ordering an all-out attack. The true and actual reason behind this seemingly calm decision to avoid the complete demolition of the large meeting tower comes down to money. Turns out that a few days ago, Maestro had a pretty serious and tense business talk directly in the organization president's office. Palmer complained that the property damage caused by the security agency went over the line, since Maestro destroyed dozens of buildings during the year. He warned sternly that from now on, all bills and repair fees for structures would go straight to the security sector's own pocket. Maestro was left in a complete state of shock and began to sweat cold with the news that his department would have to shoulder all the expensive costs. Luckily, the hero doesn't have the slightest clue about this financial situation and just wonders why the soldiers are taking so long to charge. Maestro fakes a cough and orders an elite trio of his men to head up the stairs and pull off a quick capture of the invaders in a clean way. The three selected soldiers take a step forward, holding their weapons firmly, and accept the direct orders from their commander right away. The other female soldiers in the group complain about being left out of the main advance, but Maestro tells them to just provide tactical support. He begins to think calmly about what kind of destination or exemplary punishment to give to the rogue director Neo as soon as they manage to lock her down. The trio of combatants enters quietly into the hall of the ruined tragedy building to begin clearing the area and track down the targets hidden behind a broken stone wall. Ryushin notices the enemy's advance and comments that they finally decided to make a move. Maestro raises his arms with class and begins to wave his baton in the air, preparing to closely conduct the next beats of the fight. He barks out the presto command, releasing waves of magical musical energy that begin to echo and vibrate very intensely in the air. With that, the three soldiers launch a frantic charge in the hero's direction to the sound of a magical melody that drastically boosts their speed. The three soldiers from the string trio charge full force toward the hero, readying their musical instruments for the attack. Ryushin says the real battle is about to begin, but the girl screams desperately, begging him to wait a moment. She claims there is something of extreme importance they need to do first, leaving the female violinist pretty confused by the interruption. The soldier clears her throat and begins to read the guy's arrest rights, making him wonder if they are really criminals. From tragedy, Neo suddenly throws herself forward and screams desperately, calling for the security officer in an attempt to manage to escape the hero's clutches. She says everything is a misunderstanding and begs for backup, while Ryushin taunts her, but the officer tells both of them to shut their mouths. The soldier reveals that Palmer wants Neo alive, as she claims mockingly that with her low intelligence, it would be impossible for her to try to double-cross the group. Neo is left quite surprised and relieved to hear that. While Ryushin just lets out a sound of curiosity, facing the obvious conclusion, the girl practically cries tears of joy in her thoughts, viewing the soldiers as the true and generous protectors of Naftafal. With tears of emotion running down her flushed face, the ally screams, thanking them immensely for their kind and fair attitude. She yells her thanks to the violin crew, while the soldiers position themselves calmly with their string instruments in hand. But the expression of the female violinist and her other two partners suddenly shifts in a way that leaves Neo a bit confused. Ryushin just observes the quick shift in the opponent's behavior, staying totally alert for what's to come. The young Oni also notices the heavy atmosphere that suddenly took over the entire ruined boardroom and is left clueless. The MC then calls out to his prisoner in a very calm and serious tone before the situation takes a turn for the worse for good. At that moment, the two soldiers in suits declare aloud that the real final punishment given to her is an immediate death sentence. Neo complains about the sudden shift and calls her Mrs. Violin, leaving the female soldier of the trio extremely furious with that silly nickname the Oni insists, asking if she isn't a violin, and the blonde answers that she is, but the tone used by her was total mockery. She then points to the soldier with purple hair and calls him a violin too, leaving the guy furious as he demands she apologize on the spot. To make matters worse, she says the last soldier is just a giant violin, leaving him enraged while he prepares to kick off the attacks. Facing the overwhelming fury of the three warriors of Naftafal, Neo realizes the friendly vibe is totally gone and calls them monsters. They surround the area with a massive glowing magical energy and warn that she will now be executed without mercy alongside Ryushin. She asks desperately if she said something wrong, and the MC just agrees, saying she definitely messed up big time in what she said. Ryushin begins to give a music lesson, pointing to the blonde trio leader and confirming that she does indeed carry and play a violin. He then points to the second soldier of the group and corrects her technically, saying the guy's instrument is actually a viola. And finally, he focuses on the third opponent and explains precisely that the large instrument the robust man carries is a cello. The blonde promises to try and convince the president to spare the guy from demise, making Neo yell in rage, wondering why only she has to lose her status. The security officer laments, saying she really had the hope of managing to settle this whole situation in a very peaceful way. But she states that with rude partners like these, she can't do anything. So she declares that the traitor must pay immediately. The other two soldiers also begin to play steadily, releasing a devastating magical aura of green and purple color through the area. They aim all that mystical energy in Neo's direction and reinforce that her execution will indeed be carried out without any mercy right there. All the musical fury collides at once in the center of the location, triggering a massive crash of glowing colored energy and smoke. The enemies watch the smoke clear out, while Ryushin's voice echoes imposingly, saying he cannot allow them to do that. In the middle of all the dust, a large bluish defense structure begins to materialize and stand out in an imposing way in the area. The youth emerges using a massive energy shield to protect Neo and comments mockingly that she is his big source of cash and client. The three warriors of Naftafal keep their focus facing the unbreakable barrier, while Ryushin goes back to listing the trio's names. He points his index finger forward in a fearless way and declares he will classify all three as threats that must be eliminated. Meanwhile, outside the building, Maestro joins his hands and silently begs for his men to act with elegance and class. But inside the ruined tower, the combat atmosphere hits its peak level of danger between the MC and the elite trio. The blonde leader asks if all her comrades are ready to charge, receiving quick affirmative replies from both. She positions her bow on the musical instrument and announces the start of her unit's devastating joint attack melody. Ryushin focuses his sharp combat glare, mentally preparing to deal with the dangerous mystical attack that is coming from the trio. The three begin to play in perfect harmony of movements, releasing a beautiful and devastating barrier of magical musical notes through the air. The sound rapidly fills the entire area, creating very pretty colored mystical waves that, however, carry a lethal force like no other. Ryushin pulls out a bright blue energy dagger and screams, telling Neo to wake up already to get ready for the grand charge. With an extremely fast and precise movement, he uses his sharp dagger to slice through Neo's energy bindings once and for all. Finally free from her restraints, the girl supports herself on the broken stone floor, still a bit dizzy and startled by the hero's speed. He warns that he won't manage to protect both of them from all blows, so he orders her to dodge the dangers on her own, receiving a trembling yes. Without losing time, the hero and his ally take a large leap to the sides to escape the fast advance of the enemy energy waves. Ryushin uses all the power and agility of his glowing shield to block the direct and devastating strikes that keep coming from the trio. Ryushin keeps absolute focus on the combat, analyzing with caution the rhythm of the musical attacks that are being unleashed against him. Suddenly, the enemy moves with absurd speed, catching the MC off guard and making his eyes open wide in shock. The three combatants from the military elite drop from the ceiling in perfect synchronization, preparing a heavy physical charge against the youth. He manages to react fast and block the impact with his shield, admitting aloud that their attack performance is incredible. Ryushin praises them, saying that is indeed a magnificent presentation, and, for that exact reason, it becomes so dangerous he concludes his line of reasoning by stating seriously that the destructive power of that harmony is truly scary. The blonde leader smiles, flattered, and praises Ryushin, commenting cheerfully that he does indeed possess a very good ear for music. Ryushin responds with a smirk that his client, the pop star Rie, is after all a true professional in the music business. The female violinist gives a light, sarcastic laugh, admitting that the youth did indeed manage to score an excellent client to protect. She locks her blue eyes on him and confesses that she feels bad about taking him out, suggesting he just surrender without causing any more trouble. The hero declines the proposal and fires back, saying they are the ones who should surrender. But the enemies reply that won't be possible either. Neo completely loses her patience with the dialogue and screams desperately for them to stop praising each other and start fighting once and for all. Ryushin asks if she can't appreciate the beautiful harmony, and she screams back furious that she is only worried about dodging to save her life. The girl demands that he finish them off already. While the MC lets out a disappointed sigh over her not knowing how to appreciate good art, Neo complains indignant at his comment about waste, while the bodyguard focuses all his attention on the enemy's technique. He reflects thoughtfully that it had been a very long time since he referenced such a refined attack, noticing how the violin guides the entire main melody. In his quick mental analysis, he notices that the viola functions perfectly as a bridge connecting the sounds of the violin and the cello. The cello provides the ideal support underneath all the music, making the synchronization of the three turn into a perfect combat trio. He admits he could listen to the melody all day long, while Neo yells desperately in the background, pressuring him to do something before she drops out. The MC responds mentally to her complaints about him not wanting to wrap up the combat once and for all against that trio. He reveals that it's actually not a matter of him not wanting to defeat the opponents, but rather the fact that he simply cannot manage to do it right now. The guy explains that the teamwork of all three enemies is so flawless that it doesn't leave any opening for him to manage to strike. He focuses his gaze on the mystical and perfect harmony generated together by the vibrant and powerful sounds of the violin, viola, and cello. Neo snaps for real and yells, asking what on earth he is trying to say with so much boring talk focused on violin, viola, and cello. She vents screaming, pretty irritated as she declares with all her might that garbage music sounds exactly the same to her ears. Ryushin opens his eyes wide instantly and is left completely speechless upon hearing that blunt, loud declaration from his ally. However, the expressions of the three soldiers from Naftafal's string unit suddenly shift to a look of pure contempt and murderous rage after the insult. They scream offended, asking how she dares say their art sounds the same, demanding to know what kind of broken ears she has in her head. She keeps firing back aloud that it's all the same thing indeed, and that they just keep repeating nonsense about harmony non-stop. She caps off her insult by saying that the three musical instruments are absolutely identical and that there is zero difference between them. The blonde of the trio squeezes the bow of her violin with extreme fury, her hands shaking out of pure rage facing the endless ignorance of the prisoner. She asks with a trembling, dark tone of voice if the Oni is truly unable to manage to differentiate the sound of each of the instruments there. Neo confirms screaming and asks what's the point of combining the same category of instruments, mocking if the next step would be playing in front of the mirror. Taken by an unprecedented fury, the members of Naftafal's elite unit declare in a threatening tone that now they are going to play the right way. They warn that the new mystical performance will be so intense that even the broken and foolish ears of the Oni will manage to spot the difference. Next, a massive torrent of purple and red mystical energy explodes directly in Neo's direction, making her let out a deafening scream. The blonde leader attacks mercilessly and screams that the highest pitch belongs to the violin, which is the main one responsible for leading the whole theme of the piece. The girl is hit again in a violent way by a heavy torrent of bright green mystical waves, yelling in absolute despair. The second soldier fires his green mystical strike, explaining that the mid-range sound belongs to the viola and serves to give the whole ideal vibe to the show. Another powerful blast of dark purple mystical energy explodes right before the young Oni, throwing her violently against the rubble. The third soldier fires his devastating purple attack, explaining that the lowest tone belongs to the cello to give weight and depth to the melody. The leader asks arrogantly if she managed to get it now, but the one who responds in a surprising way back is Ryushin himself, with a smile. The hero praises the trio, saying all three possess excellent combat presence and a simply extraordinary individual physical skill. The enemies get a bit suspicious of the guy's confident tone, while he begins to channel a huge amount of his combat energy. The bodyguard explains that before, the teamwork between them was so perfectly balanced and error-free that it made everything tough on his end. He admits that their synchronization was so absurd at the start that he himself could barely find time to dodge the charges properly, but he reveals that, due to the anger from the insult, now each of the three is trying to draw attention individually and shine brighter than their partners. The hero states confidently that this rookie lack of synchronization makes the job of passing straight through all their attacks incredibly easy. In a fraction of a second, he appears right before them, materializing a massive, scary, bright blue energy cannon locked onto the target. The three soldiers from Naftafal's elite widen their eyes, completely terrified upon noticing the massive, devastating weapon pointed at them. The hero fires his large, bright blue energy cannon, releasing a massive mystical blast that fills the entire room. Ryushin comments coldly that their music is just noise, while the elite trio is thrown far away in a violent manner by the power outside. Maestro opens his eyes wide, completely horrified, and surprised upon witnessing the massive force of that counterattack. An explosion of blue, mystical energy breaks out directly from the top of the building, destroying the main structure of the location even further. The veteran falls into total despair and screams with his hands on his head upon seeing the building collapse, thinking of the expensive repair bills. The other members of the team panic and ask what happened to the three soldiers from the string trio who were launched outside. The three combatants fall hard on the ground right before their commander, completely defeated and knocked out by the force of the blow. The female soldiers of the group let out screams of pure shock upon seeing the state of their comrades, unable to believe they were defeated so easily. They rush to provide aid to the wounded and ask if everyone is still breathing, receiving a weak reply from one of them. The blonde leader of the string trio crawls on the ground with difficulty, refusing to accept that they ended up losing the direct clash. Maestro runs desperately over to them, crying tears of panic and begs on his knees for the expensive musical instruments not to crack. He sobs as he asks if they have any clue how much all that broken gear costs, leaving the female violinist very confused. The veteran focuses his gaze filled with fury and resentment toward the top of the tower, uttering Ryushin's name with plenty of hatred. Meanwhile, up high at the large ruined opening, the MC and the young prisoner Neo observe the movement of the army. The commander of the marshals stands up infuriated and orders all his military forces to initiate a full-scale charge to avenge the trio. Ryushin comments laughing that the trio is still breathing and says he is looking forward to seeing the performance of the marshal's captain on the battlefield. Maestro asks if the backup musical instruments for the string crew are already set, receiving quick confirmation from his group. He warns that if they break things again, he will dock it from their pay, making a soldier joke around saying he prefers to turn in his notice. The commander raises his hand firmly in the air and announces for all his subordinates to kick off the true musical performance of the day. The hero and Neo watch the scene from above with caution upon seeing the enemy commander initiate the conducting of his powerful mystical symphony. A massive, colossal barrier of colored energy, of pure musical magic begins to rise at full force toward the ruined tower. Ryushin quickly positions himself firmly, preparing to activate the absolute defense of his potent tech shield once again. He channels his bluish mystical energy and creates a large protection barrier around himself to try and contain the advance of the massive power. The massive vortex of sonic magic crashes with full force against the MC's blue shield, triggering a large destructive pressure. The youth complains about the strain, while Neo grinds her teeth out of pure fear, noticing how the increase in opponents drastically raised the firepower. He praises the improved technique under Maestro's conducting, making the Oni yell, telling him to shut up and focus on defending her with everything. The hero answers calmly that he is already doing exactly that, while focusing his combat gaze on the rival army's next moves. The youth analyzes and deduces that all the enemies there possess offensive-type abilities, which masterfully convert sound waves into energy. He notices that Maestro uses a special type ability to perfectly apply various stat boosts to his soldiers' strikes. With more members, the attack leaves no openings, making Ryushin realize that a careless charge right now would put them in serious and fatal trouble. The MC then decides to cook up a new immediate plan of action to turn the dangerous situation around and calls for his ally in a serious tone. He turns his face in her direction and calmly orders her to try and taunt the enemy army that is attacking with the melodies. Neo is surprised by the unusual order, but the hero confirms, explaining that the intent is to completely destabilize their musical synchronization. He explains that he has been looking for an opening to pull off the ideal counterattack, but that it is indeed impossible to find any breach there. Neo asks how to do that, and the guy says that insulting others is her specialty, leaving the girl thoughtful about the suggested idea. In the middle of the grand musical execution of the frontline soldiers, Neo's loud voice suddenly echoes, catching everyone's attention. The hero keeps the defense barrier well active, while the ally takes the front spot to start delivering her worst insults. She sticks out her tongue and makes rude gestures, screaming that they play terribly and that this is indeed the worst performance she has ever heard in her life. Ryushin is left embarrassed by the childish level of the taunt and asks if she is in preschool, but she defends herself saying she just followed the order. The MC sighs, disbelieving in his thoughts, considering that by no means would such a silly, childish insult have any real effect. But to Ryushin's complete surprise, the silly taunt works, and the soldiers of Naftofel begin to shake and mess up their rhythm out of fury. The clarinet soldier locks an enraged look on her, while Maestro tries to step in, making a calm, mystical gesture with his conducting baton. The commander orders everyone to cool it and tells the group not to let themselves get carried away by cheap, classless taunts. Coming from the Oni, Ryushin notices that the enemy army managed to regain stability and synchronization very fast, and the Oni asks what to do now. In his thoughts, the hero reflects that the absolute ideal move at this moment would be managing to somehow destabilize Maestro right there. He focuses his analytical gaze on the senior citizen, trying in a desperate way to find some efficient manner to break the conductor's posture. Without giving the hero time to think, Maestro raises his arms again with class and starts the setups for the new technique called Pianissimo Ryushin, and Neo widen their eyes in complete despair upon noticing the colossal amount of purple mystical energy that begins to drop from the sky. A gigantic, devastating column of purple magical energy falls full force onto the main structure of the location, triggering a massive crash at the base. After the violent explosion of dust and rocks, the bodyguard manages to escape and lets out a tired sigh of relief with his shield activated. Suddenly, the hero notices a very important detail upon focusing on the trembling lips and cold sweat of the feared Maestro. He notices that the leader of the marshals is constantly looking back, highly concerned with the structural integrity of the building. Maestro screams to the orchestra to play softly, but a soldier fires back confused, saying they always play that part with force. The old man yells irritated, telling everyone to just follow his conductor's baton from now on, receiving a deflated reply from them. Observing everything from up high, the MC silently analyzes all the movement and synchronization of the enemy orchestra below him. Ryushin lets out a slight, confident smile upon finally unlocking what the real weak spot of their whole mystical combat strategy is. The guy turns to the girl and says, the time has come for her to act, leaving Neo surprised as she asks if he wants her to fight too. She yells desperately, saying it is impossible to beat those warriors, accusing him of wanting to dump her, but the hero just vents. Bored, he reveals in a relaxed way that Neo's metal staff is actually stored inside his tactical briefcase and tells her to go grab it. The young Oni widens her eyes, completely unable to believe it, upon hearing that he actually took the care to bring her favorite combat weapon from inside the open tactical briefcase. The iconic and potent bright red metal staff begins to emerge wrapped in a mystical pink light. She holds the metal staff with plenty of joy and excitement, feeling extremely fulfilled and ready to kick off the brawl. Neo celebrates, saying she thought she would never see her weapon again in her life, but the guy cuts her off, telling her to focus on the attack plan. He locks his red eyes and begins to explain with a wealth of details what the real role of each one will be in this infiltration. However, instead of following what was agreed, the treacherous girl decides to leap back with the staff on fire to try and crush the hero from behind. Neo screams in fury, telling the guy to fade out once and for all, unleashing a brutal strike with all her strength in the direction of his head, but the attack rebounds violently against a hidden barrier, triggering blue electrical discharges that hit the girl herself back with everything. She falls on the ground paralyzed, wondering why that happened, while the guy ironically advises her to quit it if she wants to stay in the game. He explains in a relaxed way that he placed a secret clause in the magical contract that makes any damage directed at him bounce back onto the attacker. Neo widens her eyes in a shocked way upon discovering that the guy can pull off such a wild, mystical trick of damage reflection. She realizes that his power goes way beyond summoning weapons from the briefcase, but the guy just tells the Oni to stop stalling and gear up fast. The girl observes his silhouette with apprehension, wondering mentally how a single person can carry so many powerful abilities. She stays intrigued, trying to decode what kind of severe restrictions the guy needed to impose on himself to manage such destructive force. Outside, the female soldiers begin to complain about fatigue in their hands and arms, but Maestro asks for them to hold steady for longer. The old man focuses his attentive gaze and explains that the guy's protective barrier is weakening bit by bit, signaling his energy is running low. Sure enough, the MC stays steady at the top, but the large bluish energy barrier begins to showcase clear signs of wear and tear. A female soldier suggests sending the entire structure sky high to wrap up the fight already, but the president denies yelling, saying that is off limits. He insists that they must keep all property damage to the absolute minimum possible, but the soldiers suddenly notice an unusual movement. Neo re-emerges from behind the smoke, wielding her huge metal staff wrapped in pure spiritual battle flame, ready to kick off the plan. Maestro just observes the appearance of the young demon in a calm way and lets out a pretty confident laugh, keeping his steady conductor's stance. He deduces in a logical way that Ryushin decided to focus all his remaining energy just on keeping the Absolute Shield's defense barrier active. With that, the Bodyguard would be leaving all the heavy lifting of the attack and the mystical combat offensive entirely in the hands and claws of the Oni. Neo grips the staff wrapped in intense flames and begins to set up the positioning of her first stance and secret technique of the Oni style. She leaps in a spectacular way toward the open battlefield, concentrating all her fury and the heat of the flames into a brutal strike. Maestro smirks arrogantly and says he accepts the challenge with open arms, waving his mystical baton to coordinate the quick counterattack. The young ally unleashes her crushing strike toward the ground and screams with all her might the name of her devastating tremor technique. A gigantic, colossal wave of fire and rocks explodes full force against the main street of Naftafal, engulfing the entire front line of the battle. The leader of the marshals opens his eyes wide, completely terrified upon seeing the level of absurd destruction of that mystical impact technique. He screams desperately with his hands on his head to protect the ruined building, while the soldiers ask, startled, for him to focus on conducting. The old man freezes completely and paralyzes his movements all of a sudden upon hearing Ryushin's cold voice whispering right there nearby. The hero drops from above toward him and comments in a quite ironic and taunting way that their grand musical performance turned into hot garbage. Maestro yells the guy's name with extreme hatred. While the MC concludes saying he was holding back his strikes to avoid damaging the building, Ryushin falls from the sky like a blue meteor and strikes the enemy with a direct and violent impact blow from his hands, generating a large explosion on the ground. The violent punch crashes with colossal force against the chest of the marshal's commander, destroying the asphalt ground around them instantly. He stands imposing over the completely defeated body of the rival commander on the ground and coldly warns that he should worry only about himself.